Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for having me here today. It's a great honor to present this work, especially given that the splashdown anniversary of Apollo 11 was about 15 minutes ago. We're going to be on the Hornet later today, which is just excellent. Really, what I want to talk about today are breaking down data silos that happen on a mission. So you can think about a mission in this term in that there's administration that ties it together that makes this an Apollo mission. But really, all this information is stored separately usually, and especially when it's historical data, it never is pulled back together again in any way. And we're looking for a way to pull that data together. We also want to use modern data that is from current missions, and it too can have different things that tie together in terms of it being a mission. LRO is a great example where the instruments are all separated. But we also want that to be connected to the historical data in an interesting way. So you need two things in order to do this. It turns out if you use time, when things occurred on a mission, that you can tie everything together. That's number one. And then you need a piece of software that will play it all back, and that's number two. So you really want to create a temporal thread, and to do that, you have all these usual things that you have, like audio on the top left. You have photo galleries. We're all used to looking at photo galleries independently from anything else. We have audio. Oops. Are we okay? We have audio from the mission. We have film footage that was taken at different times. And we need to figure out a way to tie this all together. And if you use the transcript as the index and the audio that goes with that transcript, that becomes the key. And then photos appear when they are taken, and footage appears when it is actually shot. And that little move in the slide there represents about 6 years of work to do that for Apollo 17. And we've tied together all these data silos. So now we have the data, and I put it together in a website that's called apollo17.org. I recommend it. It looks like this. Essentially, we have time at the top, where there's 3 levels of zoom on a timeline, so you can mouse over for given any second of the mission. There's footage and television broadcasts that occur on the top left there. Photos appear as they're taken in the center, and the transcript is on the bottom left, and it's searchable and indexable. If you click on a photo, you don't get the normal photo gallery. The whole thing shifts the moment that photo is taken. It forces you to read about what the crew is saying at the moment that photo was taken. And the parts of the mission all complement each other and provide context to each other in an interesting new way. This was put online in 2016, and I'm pleased to say it was I thought I was making about 10 other space enthusiasts really happy, and it turns out the whole world really connected with this idea. And Apollo transcends nations and languages, and it's just amazing. And so it's not only a cool thing out on the internet and fun, it's also a tool. I work now in the astromaterials group that Lori mentioned earlier. And if you look at what we can do with that, here's an example of searching for a lunar sample number. You type in a sample number in the search. You click, it brings you to the moment that sample was collected by Jack Schmidt. If you click, he brings up this panel. We have MoonDB data at the top. If you click that, you get into the curation website for all the information on that sample. We have the Lunar Sample Compendium for that sample. We have every photograph that's been taken since it was returned to Earth. And we have every paper that has been written since 1972 that references that sample number, all in the moment that sample was collected by Jack. And we get to find out by what Jack was saying. It provides context now to all this academic work that happened after the mission. It's being pulled all back together to the moment the sample was collected. We can use modern data like LRO data to recreate the traverses. Here's a drive of Gene and Jack driving up to the Shorty crater. They actually parked really far up in the rim. Jack, I think I remember you saying, I think that's far enough, Gene. I don't think we need to go any further. And you can see that.
And keep your eye on him.
Yeah. And this is providing new context as well. We get this sense of awe of where these people were and the adventure that they were on. And we also get observations that Jack is making as they're driving being applied back to those LRV samples that were collected along the way. So everybody said that's really great and everything, but what do you do in Apollo 11? So about 2 years ago, I said, I guess I'd better start on that. You know, the 50th anniversary is probably going to be a big deal. So I started working on that, and I'm pleased to say I got it done. The problem is Apollo 11 isn't nearly as complete or interesting as 17 from a geology or science or even a media standpoint, way less photographs. And I realized quickly that it was actually a story about mission control, because Apollo 11 was really about firsts. It was about survival. And at the same time, I came across these tapes. This is a major effort that was funded by the National Science Foundation to digitize these tapes. These are 30-track, 1-inch tapes, and this is all the material that is on these tapes. It has not been heard for 50 years. These tapes were in the National Archives, and the only machine that can play them back was broken, and it was at Johnson Space Center. So a 6-year effort by University of Texas, Dallas resulted in digitizing these tapes, and through some clever software manipulation, I was able to deflutter them and re-speed them to exact time using time code that was on track 1 of each of the tapes. So we actually have historical time code, which we didn't have for any of that Apollo 17 effort, for Apollo 11. It was like finding the Holy Grail. So I pulled this all together into a website that has been live for this past anniversary, and I'm really happy I slid into Homeplate and got it live about a month before the mission anniversary after 2 years of work. And it has all of the mission control audio in it, in addition to all the other stuff you just saw for Apollo 17. And this is the interface for that. And you can see that's all the different channels. You can see the activity on it. You can sit in any chair in mission control, and you can listen to all 240 hours of the mission, 50 channels wide. It's 11,000 hours of content on this website. Good luck getting any of your papers done. This is a moment, if we could turn the volume up for a second, this is a moment I want to replay for everyone.
We haven't heard anything about the contingency sample. Suggest we stand by for a minute or so here.
Can everybody hear that?
FAO EVA flight.
Go ahead.
Can we wait a minute or two now that he's inverted these, or should we remind him now?
They won't heard anything except the science priority. I wouldn't try and change in that flight.
Okay. Capcom flight.
Go ahead, flight.
As a reminder, checking with EVA FAO here. Perhaps remind him as soon as he tethers the camera contingency sample.
Welcome. It's going together now, flight.
No, he's not either. Capcom, reminder.
Roger, Neil, we're reading you loud and clear. So you get some pictures and the contingency sample.
So there we have, it was very difficult to hear, but we basically have a very smooth Bruce McCandless reminding Neil Armstrong to take the contingency sample without being heard to be reminding Neil Armstrong to take the contingency sample, because he had switched an order that was on the flight plan. He was supposed to do that first and then deal with the camera, and he got out and immediately started messing with the camera. And now for the first time, we can start to hear this process of prioritization that needed to happen and actually understanding how we're going to keep everything on the timeline. This is very important stuff that I hope a lot of people dive into and research, especially marrying the two between science exploration and operations. This has been an overwhelming response to this website. And we have Michael Collins actually tweeted it out. And I'm more impressed that Michael Collins is on Twitter than anything else. It really meant a lot. I haven't met Mr. Collins, and to know that he has seen the work and he doesn't even know where to start. He's afraid of the depth of the rabbit hole too, which I'm happy about. And there's been some, of course, super fans created. This guy, I don't understand, but he went crazy. He wanted to hear all the different channels, but it wasn't just for that super fan community. It was also being used by communities around the world to make the Apollo moment happen again as a very loud echo 50 years later. And this is, I've been told, that's hallowed ground in Australia, and that was on the big Jumbotron as they had a visiting American team, I think, at the time, which is pretty excellent stuff. I also understand that in Mission Control, the surviving members of the white team that were on console during descent and landing all were in Mission Control once again. We had just restored it, and they replayed, using Apollo in real time, the descent and landing. We've used this in the field. This is back to the actual topic of the day. This is a Survey-funded RISE, and now RISE 2, which I'm pleased to say I'm a co-I on. It's a great honor. We had Jack in the field with us. This is a couple of years ago now, teaching astronaut Butch Wilmore on the left there on how to conduct field geology on another planet. And we had lots of instruments in the field, and it was siloed, just like you would imagine it would be. And it was my job to come up with a way to connect it all together. And this is the prototype that I created for that, where we have all the different chest cameras and everything, all the different EVA data all happening in the moment that it occurred. And as XRF readings, for example, are being ordered by Butch Wilmore using a GPS waypoint, we hide that XRF data in the actual waypoint in this visualization. So we're pulling all that information back together to the moment that it was collected. And with RISE 2, we're going to be extending this to understand how far we can take it. It's also been used, we created a prototype for Neutral Buoyancy Lab at Johnson Space Center. They were interested just purely for operations in EVA. They said, could you create we don't have a tool that could actually play back all the air-to-ground and video along with all the suit telemetry, and that would be really helpful for training and everything else. So I said, yeah, just give me the data, and in a few weeks I glued this together. I showed it in a presentation, and the deputy director said, how fast can I have this? This is going to reduce risk to the crew in the pool. And that sounded like great news to me. Apparently they had an overpress run. They had an overpress run 2 years ago, quite a dangerous situation in the pool. And they asked if I could recreate that, so that what could this be used for forensic purposes to try to understand what occurred on things like that. So I created this one. And of course, how can this be used going forward? Well, with Artemis, I think we have a very auspicious moment. We don't have the same media landscape we had in 1969. We no longer have Walter Cronkite as the conscience of America. We have a splintered media landscape. And I think we've demonstrated here with the response to the Apollo in real-time effort that providing the actual mission data directly to the public is going to help to create that Artemis moment for the next generation. And the last thing I wanted to show you is something that occurred at a concert on Saturday. This is Brian May from the band Queen. And apparently this happened, which I hadn't planned at all.
Thinking of a commemoration going on, I thought we could maybe join in. I have no idea what our timing is like, but right now there is a 50th anniversary going on, and it's in real time, so possibly we might just...
Thank you very much. Any questions? And please don't ask, when are you doing Apollo 13?
What was your percentage recovery on the tapes, and what was the most difficult task you had in restoring the tape drive? Speaking as someone who did the same thing with LORP.
I wasn't involved in the tape drive itself reconstruction, but they were barely made. I think they had to recreate a playhead. That was definitely something really difficult for them to do. The data itself on the tapes, the most difficult part was figuring out tape drift and flutter, which was introduced by the actual machine. And it turned out the IRIG B timecode on track 1 has a carrier wave at 1 kilohertz that you can use as a fingerprint to detect any variation. And that was what we used to respeed the tapes actually to less than 2 seconds of drift over 16 hours. We were extremely happy with that. Jack.
I just want to personally congratulate you.
Thank you, Jack.
This is outstanding stuff. It's a lot of fun to work with, and it also helps to illustrate some of the other things that might be done. I don't know that you're familiar with, for example, with what my colleague Ron Wells has been doing with improving the color contrast and with the Hasselblad color photography. But I don't think you've yet gotten to the point where you can integrate that into your system, but it should be possible, and I'll put you in touch with Ron.
I would love to do that, yeah.
And because it could be done for all the missions that had a color material, color film in the Hasselblad camera. And also, I just would point out that if that's the correct traverse, we actually went across the sister crater of Shorty without knowing we went across the ejecta blanket of that sister crater. But you can learn a lot from these kind of missions operationally, and I really want to thank you for having stuck with it for so long.
Well, thanks very much, Jack. That means a lot.
I'm like Jack. It's not a question, but a absolute thank you so much. I think it's an incredible achievement, quite frankly, and it's going to, on Apollo 11, your insight into the conversations is going to be incredibly useful on various things. And finally, when you're on the scoreboard at the Sydney Cricket Ground, I assure you, that's Australian sacred ground. I frankly think it's so great, I'd like everybody to stand up and just cheer you or clap you or something. It's a breakthrough that's absolutely remarkable.
Well, thank you very much, but I pointed out to Jack earlier that I didn't really do it, Apollo did it. It's really what's capturing everybody, and I just pulled it together for everyone to enjoy.
Congratulations. Do you have any long-term plans to archive this important historical information? What are you going to do to back it up?
Yes, it's actually all on GitHub. It's open sourced. I'm also accessioning the reconstructed 30-track material back to the National Archives, so they have, and Johnson Space Center Audio Control Room have my work. It's not proprietary. I'm all about giving to other people to use stuff, and I've learned that if you do that, but good things happen. You don't have to keep it to yourself.
All right, and we do need to move on.
Thank you very much.